Hello, and thank you for joining me again today for the Finding Hope After Loss podcast. A big portion of today's episode will be about grief and how we live with it and learn to move forward with it. We all experience grief at some point in our lives. We may lose a beloved pet, a parent, a sibling, a close friend, or another family member. And the reason that many of you are listening today is because you know the pain and the grief of losing a baby. Though many, including myself, have the tendency to want to run away from the grief and push it aside, we have to learn ways to live with it and to cope with it. Unfortunately, the grief of losing a child will never fully go away. We simply learn how to shape our lives around it and to learn to live with it. It may change over time, but it's always there. It can be triggered at any moment, or we may go several days without feeling it, only for it to pop up again. The key is learning how to mold it into our lives so that we can heal from it and still move forward, while never forgetting our babies and always having them be a big part of our lives. Today, we will be talking with Megan from Grieving Moms. She is a mom of 6 living children, and she lost her daughter Aria at 15 months old due to sudden unexplained death in a child. She now is a coach for others who are going through the grief process, and she also has her own podcast, the Grieving Moms Podcast. Hello, everyone. Today I am here with Megan. Megan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me. My name is Megan Hillica. I am a bereaved mother and a grief coach and guide. I am pregnant with my 8th child due in like 5 weeks. So
Oh, wow.
kind of getting ready, trying to get ready to be done. I'm ready to be done with that. Done being pregnant. But yeah, I have been married to my husband for 12 years. So we have 6 living children. Our daughter Aria died at 15 months old in May of 2016. So this coming May, it will be 7 years. That's just a kind of a brief overview. We live in a school bus and travel the country, the United States right now. We live in it full time. We've been doing that for about 17 months. And yeah, that's kind of, it's because of Aria that we're doing that. But yeah, that's kind of just a brief overview of who I am and what I do.
So, do you plan to give birth in a hospital then, or since you travel around, like how is your birth going to work, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, that's totally fine. So we're gonna be in Utah for 2.5 months. We rented an Airbnb, and I do home births, so we have a midwife, and I've been working with her since like early on in my pregnancy. We just do televisits, talk on the phone. I have a Doppler, blood pressure cuff, measurements. I do all this stuff on my own. I had an ultrasound when we were in Minnesota in December. So it's a very interesting way of getting the care I need when I'm pregnant. So it's been a very different experience. But yeah, the first time I meet my midwife will be like 3 weeks before I'm due. So that will be
Wow,
very interesting. Meet her
definitely
in
an
person, I should say.
adventure.
Yeah, yep.
So how has going through pregnancy after loss been for you?
It's changed. So when Aria died, I was actually due 4 weeks after she died. So I had a baby 4 weeks after Aria died. And so I would say that pregnancy after loss, even though technically I was pregnant, after my daughter died, it wasn't the same as like, the emotions and the thoughts and the feelings that you go through before you get pregnant. Because, or even during pregnancy, that time was just kind of chaos and trying to figure out, like kind of like hoping my baby doesn't come because I'm still trying to process what has happened and like how do you say goodbye to one child and then hello to the next in 1 month. It was very, very intense. But then the next babies, so this is my 5th baby, no, fourth baby, not including that one that was born right after. after Aria died. And I would say with each baby, it's gotten easier for me. Mainly, I think, because um, I feel like I'm in a really good place with my grief and my anxiety and my emotions, and I've healed a lot of things. So I feel really, I don't want to say stable, but like stable in my own mind, like how I feel more grounded. But like so after Aria died, then I had my baby, and it was horrific because I was diagnosed with PTSD. Aria died of SUDC, so it's Sudden Unexplained Death in Childhood. It's kind of like SIDS, but after a year, it changes its name. And so basically, she died in her sleep, and there's no cause, no reason found. And so then you have a newborn that sleeps all the time, and I was just panicking all the time, always stressed, always worried. And so then when I was having more babies after, I feared that I would go back to that place of like the next baby. Am I going to be panicking? Am I going to be terrified? Am I going to be, and I'm like, I've spent hours and hours and hours processing this and healing my trauma and all this stuff, but I still feared, like, what if it all comes right back? What if I go back to that place? My baby needed a monitor. I couldn't sleep without the monitor. I didn't trust the monitor even. I don't care if she had a monitor on, I still didn't trust it. And then, with each baby, I feel like it's gotten better and different, but I still think that loss changes the way you view pregnancy. Loss changes the way, you more think like, well, like, I hope we have a baby at the end. And even and like, even if we have a living baby, it doesn't mean it's gonna live forever. Like it could die at 3 months, it could die at 1 year, it could die. I have all these. I have had them, but I feel like they don't consume me anymore. I'm in a place that I'm really grateful for, where it doesn't affect me as much anymore. But I do believe it's because of all the work I've put into my experience. But it's not an easy path, that's for sure. Being pregnant after loss and all the worries and fears, and like, like the first time, if you never experience loss, like, you don't even think about having a miscarriage or that your baby could die before it's born, or that it could die after. Like, you just don't have those thoughts. So you don't have anxiety about it or worry about it. And it just kind of becomes a part of what pregnancy is in my life. Like, I know that's a part of it now.
I know you mentioned that, you've done a lot of work with your grief, which I think is, an important thing to talk about, because grief doesn't just, it never goes away, but it doesn't just like go away on its own, So what have you found to be, most helpful in your healing and in helping with your grief?
Yeah, I would say it's changed throughout the years, and what is more, helpful and beneficial for me. Like what you said, I agree. Like, a lot of times we want to just wait for time to pass. Like, maybe if enough time passes, I'll feel better. And I'm like, there's moms that I've worked with that have had 20 years pass, and they still feel the same exact way as they did their day their child died. So it's not time passing that matters. It's what you do at the time that counts. So for me, it was really important to get help and support immediately. Like, I was immediately getting help. I could not do this alone. So for me, right away, that looked like therapy, doing EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing for my trauma. And then as time has gone on, it's kind of changed to more coaching aspect, getting coaching help and support and guidance. And then even like energy healing. And now a lot of the work I do is more of a bottom up approach, a somatic approach of feeling emotions, processing emotions, really learning how to feel emotions in your body through tapping, mindfulness, and breath work and those kind of things. So for me, now just really being present with what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, um, what's going on in my body is one of the most important tools I have for myself in my own life, not just related to grief, but everything. Knowing that it's important to feel my emotions, but my emotions aren't facts. They're not real. They're not like I can judge something as true or false based on my emotion, but that I need to feel it. I need to process it. And it's okay to be with what's going on right now in my body. So it's, I think of it as like taking an active role in your grief instead of a passive role. We're just kind of hoping that things will change, you know, like, okay, maybe in a year I'll feel better. And the passive way can be like maybe you're in survival mode and you keep taking that next step, but you're not doing anything to help support the grief. Um, but when you can step into an active role, and maybe that's with guidance and outside support and help, that's when you can kind of step off that hamster wheel of just like being in survival mode and just going through, you know, what's coming up without having a place to land or a place to like, okay, how do I deal with this? How do I process this? Yeah, it's just I would say it took me, I had to be intentional about it. I had to be like, okay, I can't do this alone. I need to do this. I chose to take an active role in my grief and be with it and work with it and process it. It's not easy, that's for sure.
It definitely isn't. I know sometimes I just want it to, like, let's just push it aside, like, let it go away, and it never goes away. So,
No, it doesn't. And I think that's what we kind of wish it would, but it's like shoving it under the rug and it's still there. It hasn't gone away, you know, and there can be times where you have to shelve it for a little bit. Like, okay, I need a break for a second. Like, not that you're really ever going to fully get a break, but like I need a break for a little bit to like breathe for a moment, you know, and that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with being able to shelve it for a little bit or periods of time or even daily and then taking it off the shelf for a period of time daily or whatever. But yeah, it's the most painful thing you can ever try to work through, that's for sure.
yeah, so are there any like specific law or specific aspects about loss that you think should be talked about more?
Um, like the thing that comes up for me, I don't know if this is what you're meaning, is I talk a lot about easing the pain of grief and then stop talking, start feeling. So like so often we think if the more we talk about it, the more um first I want to check in. Are those where you want to go with this? Like,
Yeah,
are
yeah.
those the kind of things you're talking about? Okay. So I didn't know if there's other topics you're meaning, but so we often think that like if we're talking about it, that means we're moving things through. And I think that talking about it is a really important aspect of grief and connection with others and talking about our stories and sharing our stories, sharing our children. That's a very important part of grief and healing and holding that space. But when we get stuck only in the talking, we're getting stuck in our head and we're not actually processing and feeling what's coming up in our bodies. And so that's why I say to stop talking and start feeling, because the feeling portion of it helps you move through the emotion, helps the emotion flow through you. It's really just being present with what's coming up in your body right now in this moment. And just, it's almost like a relaxing and allowing and letting it flow through you. And when we don't allow it, we're resisting it. Our whole body tenses up. We're like, oh, no, no, no. I don't want to feel that. I don't want to have that. It's just shoving it back down, right? So it's not letting it come up. When you shove it down and you don't feel it, it actually lasts longer. It actually continues for a longer period of time than when you would just let it come up, flow through you, and it's like, whoa, okay, I feel better now because I let myself feel it and flow through. And sometimes you might have to do that many times a day, you know, like, okay, here's the emotion again, you know, the same emotion, it might come back, but instead of sitting there and fighting it all day, you can just let it come up and flow through you. So one thing. I don't know if you have anything you want to say about that before the other
I just want to
thing I
say
was going to talk
I
about.
totally agree with that, I've noticed sometimes like I said, like I'll try to just not think about it, push it down, and then it like blows up even bigger. But if you kind of just
Mm-hmm.
let it out a little bit, even like you said, if it's multiple times a day,
Yeah.
it's a softer blow, I guess, than just letting it
Yeah.
build up and like explode.
Yeah, totally. Because and the thing is, it will explode. So like we think that if we're shoving it down, then maybe we're kind of not having to feel it. Like
Exactly.
maybe, but then it explodes. And also when you're shoving it down, you're not feeling it. You're also, so like this is kind of what people say to me. They'll be like, "Okay, so how do I know if I'm processing the emotion or if I'm resisting the emotion?" And like processing feels like you notice you're feeling, say, angry, and you're just like, oh, okay, I'm feeling anger. Where is it in my body? Just sitting with it. You don't even have to do anything with it. You don't have to take an action from the anger. You just be with it or resist. And then it like dissipates as you sit with it. And then the resisting is like, oh no, I'm feeling anger. Oh boy. Oh no, 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 no. I don't want this. And so you're like fighting the anger. You're getting more worked up and agitated. I'm not an angry person. I don't like being angry. What's wrong with me? I'm such a horrible person for feeling this way. So you're adding a bunch of stuff on top of the anger. So it's not just feeling anger. Now you're feeling anxiety, stress, worry, fear on top of the anger. So we're trying to push it down, but we're actually adding a million things on top of it rather than just feeling anger and letting it flow through.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that.
I mean, we all are, like all of us do that. So that's why I think it's helpful to bring awareness to it and be like, okay, um, you can, as you begin to practice, it's not something that you can just do overnight. It's a practice. And even for me, and I've been doing it for years, I mean, I think we're all human. There's not going to be any perfect in anything. And with emotions, it's just, we don't like to feel emotions. We don't want to feel the bad ones, right? So it's just kind of how it is. The other thing I want to quick talk about, the easing the pain of grief, because people will say like it never gets better. And I do not agree with this at all. People will say like it's horrible, it's awful, and it never gets better. And the reason why I don't agree with this is because I think of it in terms of clean grief and dirty grief. So grief doesn't go away. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying, we're going to move on, we're going to forget, we're going to, never feel sad again. We're just going to forget our children. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is after Aria died, I didn't sleep for months. I was constantly on edge. I had panic attacks all the time. I was riddled with anxiety. I was disconnected from my husband. I couldn't be present for my kids. I couldn't take care of my kids. I'm like, those areas of grief caused so much suffering in my life, and they made me not really be able to function in the way that I wanted to. And so for me to say it never gets better, if I'm living in that place, I'm like, this is my life now. This is how horrible I'm going to live the rest of my life. Like, no, of course it can get better. My life now is nothing like that. So I still carry grief because I miss my daughter. I miss her. We talk about her all the time as a family, and I'm never going to move on from her. And in fact, I'm very lucky I get to talk about her so often, just through the work I do. But I don't live that way anymore. I don't really have anxiety. My trauma and triggers is completely gone. Connected with my husband. I sleep just fine at night. I don't have to check on my kids when they're sleeping, even though Aria died in her sleep. It's not even a concern. I don't worry about my kids dying in their sleep. So, did my life get better from then till now? Yes, it did. 1000%. But it doesn't mean I've moved on or forgotten Aria. So, that's just kind of how I view like, does it ever get better? I'm like, yeah, it gets better. But I think sometimes we thinking it gets better means I'm forgetting or moving on, which is completely not true.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, we lost Jasmine. She would have just been 5 last month. So, I'm a little bit
Mm-hmm.
out from my loss as well. And,
Yeah.
but I tell people not every day is a bad day anymore, or not every day is like that heavy grief day anymore, like it is in the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. And so I definitely agree. Like my life isn't horrible every day, but it doesn't mean that
Mm-hmm.
I'm not still thinking about her or missing her.
Yeah. Yeah, which can be really hard to fathom when you're in the new, say, your new days of grief. You're like, what do you, I don't understand how it could ever be okay because this is such a horrible thing. And it's not that like you have to be okay or that everything has to be amazing. It's that integrating grief into your life so that you can hold grief and joy. There's not like getting rid of it. And then there's that healing. I don't know if I said this or not, the clean grief and dirty grief. It's like clearing the dirty grief and staying in the clean grief. Um, that's what that's how it can get better when you can let go of all the suffering or process all the suffering part of it and then come to the clean grief, which is just, of course I miss them. Of course I love them. Of course I'm going to talk about them. I'm never going to move on. I'm going to carry them forward with me. I always love them. Um, and there's going to be days where I'm going to be so sad. And some days I'm going to be like, the waves of like, this actually happened. I can't believe this happened. And then days of like, I'm so mad that this happened to me. Why is this my life? Those come up, but it doesn't stay forever. It's just like a wave of okay, and then okay, I'm back to yep, this is my life. This is what happened, and I'm also gonna be okay.
Yeah, that describes it perfectly, I think. When you're this, not right after the grief, or like right
Yeah.
after the loss, I mean. Like
Yeah.
we just have to learn to kind of shape ourselves around the grief and move on. And, we're allowed
Mm-hmm.
to still have happy days. That doesn't mean that we don't love them. We're allowed to be happy again. And I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people are afraid of that. Like, I'm not allowed to be happy. I'm not allowed
Mm-hmm.
to, it feels weird to laugh. It feels weird to, whatever it may be. But
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, it can be kind of weird and scary, and you start to worry when I think of it for laughing, for example, or having joy. I think of it as a way of building up your energy tank. Like grief absolutely destroys your energy tank. You're exhausted, you're drained, you're tired. And any moments that you can like cling to that bring joy, they bring up that energy tank just a little bit so that you can have more space for those waves that come. So if instead of thinking, every time you feel joy or some moment of happiness, instead of immediately being like, oh my gosh, am I moving on? Am I forgetting? What's wrong with me? You just be like, okay, I'm going to soak in this moment. I'm going to be here because I know there's going to be more waves of grief. That's a given. There's no going around that. So if I can soak in these moments, they give me more energy to navigate the next waves.
do you have any other advice for people that have like newly had a loss?
Um, a few things that come to mind would be number one, to have compassion with yourself. And grace for yourself. Like, especially if this is your first loss, even your second, it doesn't matter. Like, if you've had more than one loss, it's just giving yourself grace. Why I say the first is just because it's so new. But if you've had it, multiple losses, you kind of know a little bit about what it's like to lose somebody or a baby or whatever. But just giving yourself grace to be like, this is so intense, is deeper, more painful than you could have guessed it would have ever been. Just even watching someone else, you can't know how deep and painful it is until you experience it yourself. And so giving yourself that grace and compassion to be like, I don't know what this is going to look like. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I need. I don't know I don't know what's best for me. I don't know how I'm supposed to do these days. Giving yourself that grace to to figure it out in whatever way it is, like it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be far from perfect, and it's going to be messy, and just be with what is and give yourself that grace and compassion. And the other thing I would say is, so often we think, or it can be easy to think, that we need to do this, like be strong and figure it out and like do it like I just had somebody reach out to me and be like, I don't know why I feel like I shouldn't reach out for help, or I'm superwoman, or I just need to figure this out. And I'm like, this is the hardest thing you will ever go through, ever in your entire life. And so why not get that support and help in place immediately? Like as soon as you can, or even if it's been many years. And then sometimes we think, it's been so many years, I can't go get guidance and support and help now. It's like, it's never too late or too early to get that assistance in place, because it's the hardest thing you'll ever go through. And so you do not need to try to be strong and kind of force yourself to go through it on your own.
I have noticed that. I don't know if it's just, especially because it's just something that women tend to do, where we just kind of
Mm-hmm.
feel like it all has to fall on us and we have to just handle it somehow, and
Mm-hmm.
not ask for
Mm-hmm.
help and not ask for support and, not show that we need help. And
Yeah. Yeah. Got to be strong.
yeah,
And everyone tells you, oh, you're so strong and got to be strong for your other kids if you have other kids. And like, they like say that stuff and you're like, I'm falling apart. I'm broken. I'm shattered. And then we're like, if we have other kids too, it's like, well, I can't fall apart now. I have other people who are responsible for me. And I'm like, you know what? There can be a place for you to fall apart, um, so that you can be able to take care of your kids, able to take care of what needs to be done in your life, in your family, the things you want to do. But it's really hard to do that when you're broken and falling apart inside, that has like a mask and pretending, versus just being with it for a little bit. And then you're able to pick up the pieces and kind of hold that together. And then you're able to do it better. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's it's so painful and scary, but it's also so worth it to do healing work and to hold space for your grief and to be honest and present with what you're feeling.
yeah, I wish more people would do it. I mean, because like you said, it's one of those things that we just don't want to feel our emotions. So we just
Yeah.
push them aside, like, I'm not going to deal with that. But
Yeah.
then I think we could make it a lot, I don't know if easier is the right word, but I guess better for ourselves
Hmm.
if we actually dealt with it.
Hmm. Yeah, because like I was saying earlier, when we're shoving it under the rug, not only are we, it's not that the grief has gone away. It's not that you're not dealing with it, because you still are. It's still there and it's taking a lot of weight and energy from you. But then now you're carrying it for, say, 10 years, fully, all of that weight. Or you could deal with it now and you can lighten the load. Doesn't mean the load is gone, but you take out different weights of that load, and then the load is lighter. So for instead of 10 years, here it's 2 years or 1 year or whatever, and it's lighter. So it's it's not an easy journey, and everybody's gonna come to it in their own time, but it's definitely, I just like every person who's listening, I'm like, just give yourself that compassion and grace, and know that you don't have to do it alone, and there's ways to make it lighter and easier.
So, why do you think it's important to share your story?
To share my story, or for other people to share their story?
For you to share your story.
um I think the biggest thing now for me is to show others who are in the midst of really heavy waves of grief what's possible for life to be like when you do the work and process your emotions. Because when I was in the like very, very like deep hole, dark parts of grief, I needed those people. Like I looked for them. Like, is, I would think like, is joy gone from my life forever? Will I ever feel that pure joy that just comes, that I used to have? I would bawl at pictures of myself beforehand, be like, she didn't know what was coming for her. And she was so happy. And now I'm never going to be that happy again. But when I could see other moms who had that joy, or who had that, like, I could see that they were living their life fully, it gave me hope that I could get there. That my life isn't over, because I was 23 when Aria died. So I was like, I have a whole life ahead of me, and this is what my life is. And so to know that there's other people, that it's possible, that it doesn't mean that we're moving on or forgetting, but that there's a way to live again, even though this horrific thing has happened. Um, so that's one of the biggest things that drives me to share my story, to show other moms hope, and then give them, that understanding that I know what it's like to live like that, because it's so horrible. You feel really isolated, alone, and um, crazy. There's something wrong with you. You're going crazy. Um, and then I guess I like to talk about Aria. She is a very huge part of our family, and it's just crazy that she's not here. It still hits me, even yesterday, I was just like, whoa, this is just so, it just comes and hits you like, whoa, I can't believe this happened to us. I can't believe we buried a 15-month-old daughter. I can't believe, like, you're still kind of, every once in a while now, for me, like, it hits me and I have to wrap my brain around it again. Like, did this really happen to us? Um, so I like to talk about her and share her, and know that she is very much a part of our life, and she lived, and she matters. And just because she died doesn't mean that she's not a part of our family anymore.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I guess, I don't know. I think the encouragement for, say, for somebody who's listening, we talked a little bit about emotion and feeling, and maybe if you're like, okay, how do I even, like, I know it's important for me to feel my emotions. I know, like, I want to feel my emotions, but they're terrifying. They're too painful. Like, I don't even know how do I start, because I'm just going to go over that cliff, like, or down in the deep dark hole, and I'm going to never come out. One way you can just start is like starting to be present with the sensations in your body. You don't even have to figure out what emotion it is. You don't even need to dig into it to figure out where it's coming from, why you're feeling this way. Nothing. Just starting to, like, oh, I am feeling really, like, say you're feeling really intense emotion, or triggered, quote unquote, or whatever it is coming up. You're just like, oh, okay, I'm feeling um some tension in my chest. I'm feeling a roiling in my belly. Just getting present with the sensations in your body. Um, I would just encourage people to start there. Um, I just think it's so, so important. And there's so much more that I do, that if somebody wants to learn how to feel their emotions, they could come join Grieving Moms Haven or work with me. But it's really just getting present with your body and using mindfulness practices to feel your emotions. But that is what I would say to start with, for somebody who is kind of like, how do I do this? This is terrifying. Just starting to feel sensations in your body.
So if somebody did want to find out more information about you or work with you, where would they find information? Do you have like a website or?
Yep. So I have a website. It's www.meganhillica.com. I have a podcast called Grieving Moms Podcast. You can find that anywhere you listen to podcasts. I also have a website for Grieving Moms Haven. It's grievingmomshaven.com, but it's not always open, so you can't always join from there. Um, but then if somebody wants to watch a free video, I have two different free videos, but one is on my website for anxiety and grief. You go to meganhillica.com and you'll see it right there. Just talk about the anxiety that comes up, that can be very intense after your child dies. So somebody could go check that out too.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I think you have a lot of really great advice to offer people.
Thanks, Sarah, for having me. It's been a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you so much, Megan, for sharing your story and all the helpful information about how to move through grief. I really loved when you said Stop talking and start feeling. We can talk all day, but you're right. It's just talking sometimes, just saying the words. When we really pause and think about it and allow ourselves to feel it deep down in our core, that is when we really begin to heal. We can't address the grief if we refuse to feel it. Even though, trust me, sometimes I know it would be way easier to just try to push it away and not deal with it. I've tried it, but unfortunately, the grief doesn't go anywhere. It usually just ends up boiling over and then coming out in a big outburst. Talking and feeling can definitely go hand in hand if we take the time to reflect on the words and on the story that we're telling. For many of us, telling that story takes us back to the place where it happened, to where you heard there was no longer a heartbeat, to where you had to deliver your baby in total silence, to when your body started the miscarriage process. These moments are etched into our memories forever. Allowing yourself the space and the time to grieve these moments and feel them are so important. You can even set aside just a few minutes a day, even a few minutes a week, whatever is most meaningful to you to help get the emotions out and to really feel them. As Megan said, stop just saying the words and truly start feeling. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, we are all in this together.